Hi there. This week's lecture is going to be about elections and specifically the rules we have for electing the president, both the primary process and then the general election in November, which includes the Electoral College. What I want to do in this little video introduction is talk specifically about 2016 and the primaries that we're now in the midst of. And you might find it useful to listen to this introduction before the lecture and maybe even come back to it after reading the lecture if it was a little confusing to you the first time through. It builds in a lot of ways on some of the concepts from last week's lecture about election rules, majorities versus pluralities, and winner take all versus proportionality, which are sort of critical concepts for last week, how we have a two-party system, but also for understanding our primaries. Now, basically, the primaries are elections that the parties really use to help select their nominees for the president and for other candidates, but let's just focus on the presidential primaries right now. So the way it works with the president is every state has its own primary, and they're staggered. You know, a lot of states have already voted. California won't be voting until, really, I think it's the last state. The election will be on June 7th. And the way it works within each party is depending on how you do in the primary election, you win delegates. And these delegates then officially are the people who go to the conventions in the summer and will choose the nominees. But and the bigger the state, the more delegates you have. So it's really important, in the big states to try to win a lot of delegates. Smaller states may not be as critical. Now, each party has its own rules and each state has its own rules. And that's where it gets really, really complex and interesting. But let me sort of give you sort of the basics. So some states have a winner-take-all system. You win that state by one vote, and you'll get all that state's delegates. And if that's a big state, winning Ohio by one vote, New York, California, those huge, huge payoffs. Other states do it proportionally. So if you win 52% of the vote, you get about 52% of the delegates. So winning or losing may not make such a big difference. It may only be a matter of a few delegates, even in a big state. And I think in Ohio, I'm trying to remember, I don't remember if Sanders won or lost, but I know it was very, very close. So it almost didn't matter. It was almost a toss-up. So here's the other thing. So let's take a look at the Democrats. So the Democrats have a lot of states that are proportional. And for right now, this really works against Bernie Sanders because Clinton has a lead. And she's built up a lead in a couple of ways. One, by winning in some of the early states. But Bernie Sanders is coming on and says, hey, in the next few weeks, there's going to be a lot of states where I look good just because of the demographics of the state. But the problem is, if he wins by 51%, he's only going to get, 51% of the delegates compared to Hillary Clinton's 49%. And so that doesn't help him catch up. So he doesn't have to just win states. He would have to win them big and much, much bigger than he's been doing and is likely to do. And most pundits and political observers think the Democratic race is pretty much over, that Bernie Sanders is mostly staying in just to make a statement to help kind of keep Hillary Clinton to the left a little bit and maybe have a big role at the convention, maybe some say in the vice presidential nominee and so forth. One other thing that's unusual about the Democrats is they have a number of these so-called super delegates. And these are delegates that are not won through the primary elections, but are appointed beforehand. And they're mostly bigwigs in the Democratic Party. Often mayors, governors, senators, and things like that, who are automatically get to go to the convention and vote for the nominee. And most of these super delegates are already selected, and most of them are behind Hillary Clinton. So Bernie Sanders has to overcome that deficit. Some people say that if Bernie Sanders did win the majority of delegates of those who are selected in the primaries, it'd be pretty hard for these super delegates to overturn the people's voice, so to speak. But we'll see. I don't think it's going to even come to that. Now, the Republican race is still a little bit more interesting and up for grabs. And here's the thing. Donald Trump has a huge lead, like Clinton. But their rules are a little bit different. Now, let me point out one thing. Since there's more than two candidates running for the Republicans, what also is important to note is that to win the nomination, you don't have to just win a plurality. In other words, Donald Trump doesn't just have to win the most votes; he has to win over 50% of the votes. And when it's divided three ways, it's possible for that not to happen. So, if it doesn't happen, if he doesn't get a majority of votes of the delegates who go there to vote, then they vote again. And on the second time they vote, they can switch their votes to anyone they want. And that's what you call an open convention, or sometimes a brokered convention. There's a slight difference, but we won't worry about that. So here's the thing. None of the other candidates who are still in the race, Kasich or Cruz, can get enough wins to actually to actually win on their own, to get a majority of the delegates and win the nomination. But what they can do is get enough delegates by winning upcoming states to prevent Trump from getting a majority, more than 50% of the delegates at the national convention. In that case, all hell could break loose, because all the delegates who are pledged and by law might have to vote for Trump on the first vote will be free to switch their votes on a second vote and then people kind of coalesce and try to form a coalition of some sort behind some candidate that then can win a majority. So is that likely to happen? It's hard to say. In many of the Republican states coming up, it's a winner-take-all system. So it becomes very important for Cruz or Kasich to win some big states. And I think there's some small states coming up this week that probably won't matter that much. But when it comes to New York, California, and some of the other states in the Midwest, if Kasich or Cruz can win some of those states, they may get enough delegates to deny Trump the outright nomination. Now, here's where it really gets interesting, because you've all heard about El Nino, right? Well, El Nino is always a potential for a giant season, and we've got a pretty good one. But we have a political El Nino on the horizon here in California. We are the last state to vote, and California is proportional. So if we come into California and Trump doesn't have a majority of the votes for the convention yet, California could be a pivotal role. And because it's proportional, even if he's destined to win or lose the state, it's all going to be about getting each vote. So, boy, if that's the case, we are going to be swamped with a lot of political money, a lot of political advertisements. You could probably hang up watching TV unless you want to watch political ads, because we are going to be inundated. And what makes it even more interesting is California's proportionality system is a little bit unique as well. It's not just, say, if Trump gets 45% of the vote in the state, he gets 45% of the delegates. It all determines on how many congressional districts he wins. So every congressional district, and we have 53 of them in California, and these are the districts that we use to elect our members to the House of Representatives. Each one of these districts gets 3 delegates. So if Trump wins in Alameda County, basically, in Barbara Lee's congressional district, then he would get those 3 votes. On the other hand, if Cruz wins in Alameda County, he gets those 3 votes. So even though there are not a whole lot of Republicans in Alameda County, those candidates are going to be fighting for those votes. They're going to be here advertising, and you will certainly be aware of it if that happens. So just like El Nino, it could all fade and not happen. The nomination could be all wrapped up in the next 3 or 4 weeks. But if it's not, get out your umbrella. Take care. See ya.